Alright. This reading is from Mr. Bob Odenkirk, and his book is Comedy, Drama. This book is all about the life of Bob Odenkirk. Many know him better now as Saul from those two shows. And he definitely talks about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul in here, but I was going to start at the beginning where he's about 20 years old. He's in Chicago. Interestingly, he says, if you are into theater and you want to be doing theater, Chicago is the place to be. Not LA, not New York, Chicago. Which I was like, oh cool, I never even realized. I haven't really spent much of any time in Chicago, so how would I know? But I found that pretty interesting and cool. And so he is in Chicago, he's 20 years old, he's walking around in the winter time when it's pretty cold out there. And that's where we'll start with the story. Page 7. Under the chapter title, A Madman Leads Me Astray. At this point in my life, I am in love with all things labeled sketch comedy. Monty Python above all, but also Woody Allen, Steve Martin, and some really obscure stuff. Improvisation seemed a way into this world of sketch, and to sweeten the pot, improv seemed a swift way in. With improv, there's no need to hone skills, but rather simply learn some exercises. A shortcut! I'll take it! Except, nah, I should just give up on this whole thing. I ain't got it. Isn't that what had just been drilled into my brain? The universe was very clear just now. Stop. Go back. So I'm leafing through 2 books, Viola Spolin's hefty tome, Improvisation for the Theater, and Keith Johnstone's slimmer, idiosyncratic Impro. I'm leaning toward the shorter, more soulful of the two when into the store ambles a jabbering mound of clothing with a human being inside. He appears to be some kind of down-on-his-luck wizard, muttering incantations. And actually, I will find out that the man is a witch, and he will change the course of my thinking and even my life on this very day. A witch, ladies and gentlemen. He calls himself that with pride. The woman behind the counter calls him Dal. No, Dal, that book isn't in yet. Yes, Dal, you can use the washroom, but please try to hit the inside of the toilet. I don't remember exactly what she said to him, but she used his unique moniker multiple times. Dal. Where did I know that name from? It rang a bell, but it shouldn't have. I'd seen it before, maybe twice, maybe. In the program for a Second City review that I had attended when I was 14, 6 years earlier, or possibly as one of the final credits on the long scroll at the end of Saturday Night Live where Del Close had briefly worked as an acting coach. Doesn't make sense, except if you only knew just how intensely my prefrontal cortex had stored any and every tidbit about sketch comedy I'd watched in the past 10 years. I did not know what Del Close looked like, and I certainly didn't know his legendary status as a guru of sketch comedy performers, but that hadn't happened yet. Still, despite the obscure and threadbare connection of that name to my favorite thing, this next thing happens. I step up to this unkempt, some might say seedy-looking stranger and ask, "Are you Del Close?" "Yes." "Can I interview you?" I say, waving my tape recorder in the air to show I mean business. "Well, I just quit Second City again yesterday, and I just quit cocaine and heroin in Saturday Night Live too, so fortuitous timing. This is a good moment to look backwards and forwards and inwards." Then he laughed, which turned into a cough. He was always saying things cleverly and portentously and coughing. Del was at a juncture, and I was too, and so our junctures junctured. Our next stop is a bar where Del orders a Bloody Mary, a blast of nutrition after what he's been putting in his body the past few years. Then we walk up the cold wind tunnel of Wells Street and down an alley to his penurious digs. A one-bedroom, cluttered on the verge of hoarded level, smoke-stained pad. He talks the whole time. I listen, happily. Signs and portents in the sky! This Del Close fella, as I come to learn over his 2.5-hour ramble, is a survivor of nearly every edgy comedy scene from the past 30 years. The Compass Players in its St. Louis and New York iterations, and the Committee in San Francisco, and an important decade at Second City teaching Belushi and Murray and Ramis and everybody good. He is the Grand Master, the Oracle. Someday his name and legend will be known far and wide. He is also by appearances in dire straits. Fresh out of work, his cramped apartment cluttered with books, pulverized furniture, rampant ashtrays, and picture this, the octagonal window in the front door lacks a pane of glass. This is February in Chicago, and the wind is barging in like a boorish jerk. There was a jealous husband that broke my window last year, January 1st, and I've left it open as kind of a memorial. He explains to me, and this dialogue is verbatim from my tape. It was the coldest day of the year, 26 below zero, and I suddenly didn't have a front window. So this is balmy compared to 26 below. But the cats like it to get in and out of. And then he laughs and coughs at the memory of it all, as I sit transfixed, turning down repeated offers of a wizened brown roach. The demon February wind grapples with the gasping radiator heat, and the wind wins. And that's the last you'll hear from me on the temperature in Chicago in February. You keep bringing it up. Dub was only 49 at the time, but he looked much older because of drugs. The usual suspects: caffeine, pot, heroin, cocaine, peyote, LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, but also, back when he was traveling with Dr. Dracula's Den of Living Nightmares, a traveling show in the 1950s, he would visit flea markets and pick up old, outdated medicines collected from private stashes and swallow whatever was inside the little brown bottles, ingesting random substances from the early 1900s. He very likely ate polio. This regimen had left him a physical wreck, but his mind was as sharp and feverish as a college student on shrooms. I couldn't be more entertained by his scattershot ramblings if it were Shakespeare himself spinning a tale. It's funnier than Shakespeare, that's for sure. Here's Dal, abridged a bit. I've edited out the coughing spasms. And the soberer I got, and the more successful Second City got, the more we all realized that we were just repeating ourselves over there, and so it finally came to a head. Bernie Salins has directed the last 2 shows over there, and there has been a great, for us, for the public, it's a trivial little disagreement, for us, a great crisis of artistic vision, and it was mutually decided that since I was so heavily into experimentation and the use of improvisation to find out more and more about what constitutes a human being, and Second City is more into success and in auditioning for television, that I am no longer the director that they need over there. On and on. He talks about doing off Broadway, about his medicine show, sideshow beginnings, about the Compass and Second City runs in New York, about the Committee and trying to create a long form of improvisation he called The Herald, which would ultimately be his greatest artistic legacy. He talks about drugs. He likes talking about drugs, although almost as much as he likes doing them. I was taking a lot of methadone on those days, and Tim Leary was saying that he's going to send me some ketamine in the mail. I've gotten to know Tim in the last few years, and he says it's great. And he talks about being a witch. I had been accused of practicing shamanism for so long. That's what led me to practice witchcraft. They accuse you of practicing these things, so you figure, I better go out and find out how it's done. And the only way to find out how it's done is to do it. Shamanic journeys out of the body. You'd think his mad ramble would put me off. Me, a fairly good suburban Catholic boy. A Boy Scout, no less. Proud of it. I had great times in Boy Scouts. So what is this witch doing? Putting a spell on me? All I can say is that it drew me in and shook me by the collar and screamed in my face, "You can do this! This is gonna be great!" I trembled in the presence of his galloping mind. This stinky old dude in his cluttered apartment, one entire wall stacked with books about halfway to the ceiling, which he explained he bought with excess money he now had because of quitting cocaine. Dell had wild gray hair, tangled and oily, and his short-term memory was shot, hence the repeated offerings of tiny twizzled turd-brown joints. But his long-term memory was astonishing. He was a gnarled, shaggy Sasquatch of a man, spouting a run-on sentence that Jack Kerouac would struggle to follow. But I loved it so much. And understand this, it was reassuring. Dell's disconnected monologue made everything I secretly hoped for seem possible. I was so happy afterwards. I wanted that. I wanted lots of people and ideas and offbeat things to happen to me in my life more than I wanted to play golf or drive a big car or tell people to take their shoes off when they came into my house. And he goes on and explains basically his whole life in relation to how his work is. And mostly about comedy, hence the 3 comedies and 1 drama, and his relationship with David. Damn it, the name's David Cross. Sorry. No disrespect to David Cross, he's also hilarious. Just had a little brain fart there for a second. But the book is Comedy, Comedy, Comedy Drama by Bob Odenkirk.